the overview, kind of like to see what we're talking about today. So, first of all, we will talk about the final rule that came out last year in January. What are the trials that you have to register? The final rule for the NIH kind of trial, and why you have to register a trial, who's responsible for reporting, and how to apply for an account here at CHIP, and how to register a clinical trial on the website. So the final rule for the FDA is you have to report all applicable trials to ClinicalTrials.gov, and you have to do this at least 21 days after the first participant has been enrolled. Results have to be reported 1 year after primary completion date, and here Children's leadership requires to register upon IRB approval. Why we do it that way here at Children's is because we just want to ensure that studies that are conducted here at Children's are compliant with the rules, and it's just easier to follow up for everybody if you report and register your trial upon IRB approval. And I have to mention, sometimes it depends on what kind of funding you are going for, what grant funding you're going for. The funding source wants you to start registering when you apply for a grant. So what are applicable trials? Inclusion criteria is a trial of drugs or biologics, all controlled in clinical investigations other than phase 1. There's also an exception to that rule. We will come to the exception shortly. And you have one or more sites. If it is an IND, you definitely have to register. And if you have if you do control trials with health outcomes of devices, and other than small feasibility. So if you just have, I don't know, a feasibility trial where you just want to do a trial on a device that is already FDA approved, and you just want to see it, then you don't have to register. Pediatric, of course, post-market surveillance trials when you are required by the FDA, that are required by the FDA. Exclusion and voluntary submissions. For trials that do not include drugs, biologics, devices, such as behavioral intervention, is an exception to that rule too. Phase 1 drug trials don't have to be registered, and non-interventional observational trials don't have to be registered. Small, as you can read here, small feasibility trials don't have to be registered on ClinicalTrials.gov either. But there we come to all these sections of what I just said. So the NIH has a little different take on who and what has to be registered on ClinicalTrials.gov. I don't want to read all of these examples now, but the main thing is that you have to remember, if you are funded in part or in full by the NIH, you have to register your trial.
So, Elena, as an investigator is getting support through the CTSI, which is an NIH-funded mechanism, do they have to register their trial?
They should. They should register their trial because it is part. You get funded kind of part by the NIH. So that is, because one thing I have to say, the NIH is changing their rules a lot because they're still trying to figure out who and what should register. But for right now, if you just remember, I'm NIH funded in part or in full, I have to register my trial. Why do I have to register? register a trial? Well, first of all, it is required by the FDA and by the FDAA 801 law. If you want to publish, the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors usually require you to register your trial. And they are not very fond of post-registering your trial when you already done your trial and you want to publish and they say, well, you have not registered. So you have to register once you start. Of course, because of transparency for all participants in the research committee, you should register your trial. And it is also a potential information for potential participants and referring clinicians. If they have a disease that they would like their patients to participate maybe in, they can look it up on ClinicalTrials.gov to find a trial maybe. To reduce publication bias and to help everybody involved to understand the context of the study results. And to promote more efficient allocation of research funds. This has been a problem in the past that this institution over here is doing a trial and we are doing a trial, but actually we are looking for the same thing. So the money is always scarce in research, and just to ensure that there is no double trials on the same disease or on the same device have been done, you should register.
And I also saw in one of the professional research journals how they're tying the right to try with CT.gov registration because they may be offering the same trial at Maryland or at Georgetown that participant who's interested could be in, and that would save the doctor that the family approached under right to try status a lot of paperwork and regulatory burden.
And it helps IRBs to determine the appropriateness of the research studies. Not to mention that if you fail to register, there are high penalties because it is law now that you have to register your trial if it's an applicable trial. And these fines are there are a lot of money that you can, not the biggest fine for an institution, because as an institution we are still responsible to ensure that our investigators register their trial. If we fail as an institution to ensure that our PIs register their trials, I mean, it's not only that the PI can get in trouble, but the whole institution can get in trouble, which means they can hold all federal funding from the whole institution. So just because PI over there failed to register their trials, and you think, this is not my problem, yes, it is your problem, because if the federal government can hold all funding from everybody.
And is it okay if I show what happened in the CT.gov consortium?
Right.
On the call? Well, there was a call, it was either last week or this week, where an NIH institute actually did a spot check of all of its awardees, and the awardees who did not post on ClinicalTrials.gov got a nice little letter from the institute about their delinquency and posting. And then FDA, someone from the FDA was also on the call, and the person said that although FDA is not citing lack of registration and warning letters and 483, that information is going to the division that issues the audit to the investigator.
So who is responsible for reporting? So first of all, it's always a sponsor. And usually the industry trials are not so much a problem, at least not in this institution, because industry is very, they make sure that they register their trials because it's they usually want to get something out of it. So what they usually want to get out of it, they want to bring a drug to market, or in the end, they want to make money. So, and they don't want to get a penalty for not registering or doing something wrong. So, you know, the industry trial is usually not so much of a problem. I have found in being the administrator at ClinicalTrials.gov here, industry is really not the problem. What is the problem is the principal investigator-initiated trial. And if you have an investigator-initiated trial, you as a principal investigator are responsible in registering your trial.
And I think that goes back to something that we talked about in last month's series, where the FDA speaker said there's oftentimes misperception that the rules and regulations don't apply to academic investigators because they don't have the infrastructure that pharmacy or that the pharmaceutical industry has. And she was very clear, the same rules and regulations apply. There's no lesser of a bar for academic investigators when it comes to rules and regs.
It is also your responsibility when you have registered your trial that you update your records on a regular basis, especially if something major happened in the protocol, if you have a change in protocol, if you have a change in consenting. It is your responsibility to update your records on ClinicalTrials.gov to be seen in the public that a major change has happened. If nothing happens, it is your responsibility to go into ClinicalTrials.gov, to go to your account and update or verify at least that the record is still as shown, that nothing changed, but you have to go in every 6 months and verify that.
And one of the common findings that I have in this institution when I do audits is that the team will submit an amendment and amend the inclusion criteria, but they don't go in and update CT.gov. And since inclusion criteria are posted, that's one of those qualifying events that require an update within 30 days of the change.
And it's also, I mean, like, even though it's not the full protocol shown in ClinicalTrials.gov, but there's usually a summary and a short description of what you're doing. If you have a major change in your protocol, you have to amend the description as well.
And some academic institutions actually put in their IRB application for amendment. Does this amendment trigger a CT.gov update to try to bring it to the investigator's attention that you need to pay attention to that when you're changing the protocol?
Does the IRB here do that?
Not to my knowledge.
Not as of yet. I mean, it's still a work in progress. If you have any really if you are in doubt, you can always write me an email and reach out to me, and I usually, I'm not saying I know all the answers, but I usually know where to find the answers. So now we come to how do you get an account? I mean, here, this institution is very simple, basically. The easiest way, of course, here, children, is if you write me an email. Then I will create an account for you, and that's it. I know sometimes for people who do not know who I am or how to reach out to me, you can always go to ClinicalTrials.gov, to the website, and look it up under the organization account.
I know that one of our attendees actually tried to do a posting, and we were looking through it, and we couldn't find Children's National on the list.
Exactly. Don't ask me why it has been, our organization is listed as the Children's Research Institute, and it's listed under universities. This is why here it is usually, this predates me, why the decision was made to list it as is. But, this is one thing. It's the easiest way is usually to reach out to me. So we have a ClinicalTrials.gov email here at the Institute, which is ct.gov@cnnc. If that will get to me, or if you just email me directly. But, yeah, this has been a problem for a lot of people, that they don't find the organization listed. It is listed there, but it's a little hidden. on ClinicalTrials.gov is, first of all, you have to figure out who's responsible for registering. Sometimes you have consortiums and multiple sites, but what you always have to figure out first of all who is really responsible for registering this trial, and it's usually the lead investigator. Even if you have an investigator-initiated trial that happened here and maybe at the University of Minnesota and at Dallas Children's, but you are the main investigator, you are responsible for registering the trial. Each trial only has to be registered once.
Elena, we have some situations where one academic faculty person is the IND holder, the other is the PI. So in that case, is the IND holder, which is the sponsor per FDA, is that the person who's responsible for registering or that PI?
So I would, basically, it's who is sponsoring the trial. So I would always say, if this is the person who's also doing kind of like the funding, or then I would say the sponsor is always the one who has to register the trial. Like in these smaller occasions when one is the IND sponsor, one is the IND, and the other one is the principal investigator, these two parties should talk to each other and make the determination who wants to be responsible. So when you go to ClinicalTrials.gov, this is kind of like what it looks like. I mean, actually, the website is easy to follow. It has a lot of information on it, but it also does help you if you have questions. How do I create an account, and what do I have to do next? There's training materials on CT.gov that you can look up to, which are very helpful little webinars that can help you if you have to register a trial. So here you see, for us, it always says the protocol ID and the brief title. Just as a side note, here at Children's, I would appreciate it if it would be the unique protocol ID. For us, here is always our IRB number, because every study that has been done or is done here at Children's has an Children's IRB number. Even if it is an external IRB, we still have to have a Children's IRB number. And the brief title is also, I've noticed in a lot of instances that the same trial has like 3 different short titles, which makes it really hard to follow if you have to look it up. So I think teams should make the determination, what should our short title be? And because I've had brief titles in ClinicalTrials.gov, there was named one thing. If in the IRB, they were named something different. This is what I'm saying. Usually for us, it's very good if the IRB number is the protocol ID, and the brief title is the same as it is in the IRB. So this is kind of like what the web page looks like.
And I wanted to add for expanded access for the FDA, you only need to is that further on in your slide?
Oh, you can, go ahead.
Well, for expanded access studies, if you are the person who's making the product, then you have to register the trial. For example, we have a cell therapy lab here, and when they apply for an emergency or an expanded access IND, they have to register. But if you're getting the drug from Pfizer or from AstraZeneca, you do not need to register those expanded access protocols in CT.gov.
So it's like when you make the determination, you just press continue, and then, you know, it kind of tells you everything that you have to fill out. The record owner, this is me right now, but the record owner is usually the PI. But I have had instances where they make the coordinator the record owner. It's just sometimes easier for the study team, because I mean, we all know it's usually the coordinators who take care here, if you start creating a trial, it is very important because I create the account, that you let me know who is supposed to have access. Because if you don't have an account, you cannot be on the access list. But usually it is more than just one person. It's usually a study coordinator or maybe a second study coordinator.
Should the nurses on the study also have access, or they don't need it?
They don't need necessarily. If they're not doing anything, what I'm saying, who needs access is besides the PI, is the person or the person who will take care of this record. If you so when you get on there, you have the protocol section. You have to press open, and then you will be able to edit whatever you need. So when it's open, you see it kind of like tells you what do we need to, what do we have here. These, of course, will not necessarily show up. They just showed up because I made, so you can see I made an account, a record. You have to press the edit button, then it will open up again, and then you can start editing and do everything that you need to do. Here again, the official title, usually whatever you put into the IRB should be the same that you put in here. Because again, if you have a different title here, it really makes it hard to follow or find a trial. Click save and then go from there. Basically, it really is like intuition. It just tells you what you need to do, and you just go step by step, go through it, and then.
And sometimes under the secondary IND, you'll see the NIH grant number. You may see the IND number that was assigned by FDA. Just any other identifiers that can help folks find that trial in the pension price.
You mean secondary ID?
Yeah, secondary ID.
You said IND.
Oh, ID. Yeah. But the IND number.
Secondary ID, that field there.
Yeah, you can put the IND number.
You can put the IND number here, or whatever you still have. And it's basically really just, go through everything. Start date is usually when you really start recruiting. The primary completion date, you have to remember, especially on the investigator-initiated trial, it's like your primary completion date marks the date. 1 year from that date, you have to put results in. I've seen a lot of teams put this very narrow, and then, they realize, oh, I'm not really done with my data collection, and so, just don't make it too small. You can always change this, and you put in here an anticipated date, and just don't make it so narrow. So if you might be done a year from the start date, but, usually it is like, then it goes to your data analysis phase, and so this really means when you put in here January 2019, by January 2020, you have to put in the results. But if you have a really complicated, it might be suitable for a trial that is fairly easy and doesn't have so much data to go through. But if you have a complicated trial, like you create cells here and infuse cells in people, and that is a lot of data that you have to go through to come to results. It sometimes can take longer than a year to get to the results. But this really means once the year is up, you have to put in results.
And Elena, would you also recommend having that study start date be anticipated, because that's the date that they're going to go through to count the 21 days back to see if you're compliant?
Yes. If you can put this, the study start date doesn't necessarily, but let's see. I usually put this when you get IRB approval, which usually means I have IRB approval, I can start recruiting. I can look for patients who might be, that does not necessarily mean this is really when I started my first patient. So I usually just say put in the day that you have IRB approval. I mean, it's just, and if you look at it, it also does tell you underneath in the little fine print what it actually means. In ClinicalTrials.gov, you also have next page. It just kind of tells you if you're just not recruiting yet, you just have to remember once you start recruiting that you have to go into your record and say, yes, we are recruiting. Why is this important? It is because this is a public display. Everybody who's looking for a trial can go onto ClinicalTrials.gov and look for it. I mean, there's patients out there who are looking for trials to participate in, but if they see, oh, this one is not recruiting yet, there's no need to necessarily reach out to the team or the PI and ask for it. Then this is a problem page where usually the teams have a lot of problems. So we here at Children's, we usually collect sponsor investigator because the Children's Research Institute is not the sponsor. Even though a lot of teams put that in there, but if it is an investigator-initiated trial, you are the sponsor. You have the grant funding, and so it is your responsibility. And so a lot of times I have to go in there and change it when I'm come to a new trial, and then I let the team know, no. The principal investigator is a sponsor because it's an investigator-initiated trial. So this, you have to click sponsor investigator. Then you have, of course, the investigator's name. You have to fill that out. It's pretty much like, it tells you what it asks for, and then you just select what needs to be done. And of course, whatever you choose here, it opens up different windows.
I have a question regarding, so is all the interventions FDA regulated? If you go down, there's a selection.
Where?
It's the bottom of this page.
What?
If you go down this page.
Oh, yeah. No, I have that picture on this page.
Yeah, it's the last two questions, FDA regulated intervention.
So FDA-regulated intervention is usually the drug trial or a device trial that is regulated by the FDA. So where you have to have a 1572 form filled out, and then so any medication, a device that is FDA regulated.
So what if we have a new device?
But if it is not, is a feasibility trial?
Yeah.
You are funded by the NIH. So you just, I mean, if it is not FDA regulated, you just click no, because it's not regulated by the FDA.
Then there's an arrow showing up.
Yeah, the error, don't worry about the error. It sometimes happens because this site also is like a work in progress in, where they figure out, okay, this we have to amend. So I would not necessarily worry about it because it comes to me anyway, and then I look through the protocol and just wave it through if it really is not a device that is regulated by the FDA. And feasibility trials are not regulated by the FDA yet.
And I just want to add, like when it says FDA regulated, if you're studying aspirin, aspirin is still an FDA regulated compound. You may not have to have an IND for it, but it still meets those criteria. So be attentive to that, because a lot of people will see that and say, oh, I'm not holding an IND, or this is not being done under an IND, therefore it's no. But since you're using something that is FDA regulated, including like a nutritional supplement, that should be marked yes.
But in your case, it's a new device that...
I'm not sure whether it's FDA regulated or not. It's our development, and it's currently not subject to IDE or anything.
Yeah, I still would say it's not FDA regulated yet.
Okay. So does it belong to the 801 clinical trial?
Well, this is where the disconnect is, right? I mean, this is, I would say, no, but you still have to register because you're NIH funded. This is why, you know, the FDA has one set of rules and the NIH has one set of rules. Actually, the NIH is they just have a stricter set of rules. Here again, I mean, like I just said, in the brief summary, just a short description of your study, what you're doing. Don't go crazy, because again, this is for the public. And first of all, it has to be in layman's terms, so people who have no medical background have to understand what you're doing. And then you also have here the detailed descriptions. You can go a little more into the nitty-gritty. The brief summary is really just to grab somebody's attention. It's like, okay, I'm looking for a study with kidney diseases, and then this is just telling you, okay, this is really what I'm looking for, and then you can go into the detailed description a little further. Again, it says keep it simple. The record is public. You also have here definitions. They are throughout the registration progress. You can click on it. It helps you a little bit too if you have some trouble finding out what you should put in there. Here it also tells you, I mean, like I said, the National Library of Medicine will help you a little bit in the description, what you're looking for. A lot of times you will not find the description in there, unfortunately. So just try to come up with something not too complicated. Because if you don't use a lot of abbreviations, people don't understand abbreviations. Abbreviations sometimes mean something totally different for us in medicine than they mean for normal everyday people. And again, just go through each question, each portion, and fill it out as good as you can. If you have some problems, you can always reach out to me. And again, keep it short, not too complicated. You can, if you have more than one arm, you can have a little additional description, descriptive information in the arm description. This is what it looks like if you keep on going. For each intervention that you're doing, so if you have a drug that you have in a clinical trial and you give the patient either drug or placebo, then you have two arms, which means you have to have two arm descriptions. So you have to create an intervention box for each one, because even though, yes, one is placebo, you still have to make it very clear that you either get a drug or placebo. Or sometimes you get the drug or standard of care. So it has to be very clear what you're giving the patient. So the primary outcome measure, that is something that you have to pay a little bit of attention to when you fill out a ClinicalTrials.gov, because it will make it easier once you have to put in results. But first of all, there's only one primary outcome. Everything else is secondary, as the word says, secondary. And I mean, this should be in your protocol. I mean, it should state clearly what is your outcome, your primary outcome from this study. If you have a feasibility study, like you would probably just, you want to see if it works as intended. Then you have the eligibility. This is where brings us back with MR. And she said inclusion criteria belong in here. Why are they here? Because, again, it's for the public. If I have a disease that I might participate in a research trial, if I already see I have all these inclusion criteria, then I can reach out to the team. Contact information, so people can actually contact you. This is important too, because I know in a lot of times study teams change. The coordinator leaves, another one comes on, maybe you have a PI change or whatnot. It is important to change this around, because if somebody is looking for a trial, but they cannot reach you because your address is not valid anymore, you might miss out on participants or possible participants. I am stuck again. So once you finish your record, you have to click Entry Complete, which then means it will come to the administrator to look through it and see if they can find something that needs to be changed, or sometimes I have to go back and say, okay, you have to just make it a little simpler so people understand it. I will then approve the record and release the record. The release just means that it will go to PRS review.
And the PI releases it after you approve it?
PRS releases it to the public.
Okay, so once the PI approves.
Either the PI or I can release it, especially when it's a new record. I will release the record to PRS review. PRS is the ClinicalTrials.gov people who review the record, and then, if needed, come back with comments if they need something to be changed or questions that they might have to clarify a record and stuff like that. If everything is fine, then so you have to verify that you are the one investigator, click release, and then it goes to PRS review. And if they agree with the way I said, yeah, the record is fine, they will then release it to the public after it's reviewed. And this is when you get your NCT number assigned as well. You don't, in ClinicalTrials.gov, you don't get an NCT number once you start in your record. You get the NCT number once it's released to the public. So again, anytime we make updates, edits to the record, the PI is responsible, as in everything else in clinical trials. The PI is actually responsible, even though I know that coordinators usually make the edits. The PI essentially is responsible to look through the edits and then release it again. There's, like I mentioned before, there's training materials on the website. So if you check on ClinicalTrials.gov, you can find all these training materials. And these are some helpful links. You can also look under the NIH website. There's a lot of about ClinicalTrials.gov and what they want. And that's it. Any questions?
So, if you have other collaborating hospitals in this clinical trial, and Children's is the leading hospital, so I see there's a collaborator section which I can fill in other hospitals. Is there any other place I should give the collaborator information?
No, you just put it under the collaborator information. If you are the reason why you have to put in the collaborators as well is because if you're not the only hospital who's conducting this trial, if you have more than one site, then potential participants could reach out to the other hospitals. I don't know if that is necessary for your feasibility trial, but in drug trials a lot of times, especially since the whole U.S. is in this system, if you live in Dallas, and you're looking for a trial, and then it says, well, Children's National in Washington is doing one, but also Children's here in Dallas is doing the trial, then I can, it makes it a whole lot, it makes a difference for participants if they have to travel to Washington, D.C., or if they live in Texas somewhere, they just have to go to Dallas. This is why the collaborators do. So if you then, once it's public and you go to the list and you search for, I just say, everybody go to the home page, the first page from ClinicalTrials.gov and search for any trial. You can put in a condition. If you have the NCT number, you can put in the NCT number. Once you get there, there's a list of everybody who is conducting the trial for the possible participants to see, or physicians who are looking for something for their patients and stuff like that. So this is why you have to put the collaborators in there.
What if the trial is a little bit different between here in Children's and other, because the other is an adult hospital, so there's some difference in the protocol, in the like the recruitment, patient enrollment procedures. So there's some difference in the protocol.
Do they have their own IRB?
Yeah, they have their own IRB.
So which one is the IRB of record? Each hospital has its own IRB proof. So they should register under their name because it's a different trial actually. If you have a different protocol, and you have a different population, it's not the same trial. You might still be the lead on it, but it's still a different trial because you have two different populations. I don't know how your protocol is written, but if they have their own protocol that they gave to the IRB to look through, and they have their own IRB number, I would say it's a different trial. It's a second trial. It might be doing the same thing or testing the same device, but it's still a separate trial. What do you think?
Or do you have one protocol document, or do you have a pediatric protocol document and an adult protocol document?
We have different protocol. So here, Children's, we have a IRB protocol for Children's, and we have another adult protocol at another hospital. The trial is like 90% same, but there are some differences between these protocols.
me, that sounds like two separate registrations
Yeah.
on CT.gov.
Okay.
And I just want to bring up one thing. It's been about 3 years since I last did one of these. One thing that really tripped up my investigators that I was working with is you've got to be very specific in your objectives. For example, the PI was working with just said, we want to see if this drug helps lower or helps raise hemoglobin levels. But CT.gov is going to want to see, you assess hemoglobin levels at 1 month, 3 months, 7 months. They're going to want specific time points. And if you don't have it listed in there specifically, at least 3 years ago, it kept getting kicked back.
It's still the same thing. So your objectives is really like, well, when you had that, you cannot say kind of like, well, at some point, I'm going to, check hemoglobin levels. They really want to know, it's like, or what are your time points? You cannot, because, I mean, basically, it tells you to really think about it, what are my objectives? I mean, you cannot nilly-willy say, okay, I'm going to take some blood and then I check it. No, you have to have really consistency with every participant, and this is kind of like makes you think of it. And they will kick it back if you are not specific in your time points. Which also I have to just mention is like if you're very careful with your objective, your arm, so when you go and report a trial in ClinicalTrials.gov, and you think, well, I think I will have 3 arms, and then you have to be very careful at the beginning. You really have to think about it. How many arms will I have? What is it? What are my objectives? What am I really looking for? The ClinicalTrials.gov will let you put it in, but what you will have a problem with is on the back end when you start putting in results. Because if you put in 3 arms, but in 1 arm you really didn't do anything because you just thought in the beginning I might do this, it will ask you and keep asking you, what are the results of this arm? Why is nothing here? So you really have to think about what you're looking for, and this is what you put in there. And if you really pay attention to your objectives and your arms in the beginning and what you're looking for, it will help you in the end when you put in results.
This should all already be laid out in your protocol very clearly. So, right, just following your protocol is best.
Exactly.
But you have a written protocol too.
Yes, you have to have a written protocol. This always helps. But I mean, I have seen really records where it's like, why, and they ask me why they keep kicking back my results when I put them in. I said, well, because in the beginning you said you're looking for all this. But here in the results section, there are no results for your objective. So what happened to all the, outcome measures that you wanted to do but didn't? Why didn't you do it? Which also means, you have not updated your record very good. I know protocols sometimes change, and outcome measures throughout a study can change because you think, okay, this is really not feasible to measure this for whatever reason. But then you have to update your record.
Right, so if you have to update your record if any of your outcomes change, because in the end, when you're inputting your data, you're going to be required.
So ClinicalTrials.gov will, then according what your outcome measures were, and according to your arms that you put in the beginning, it will populate a site, just like, it's kind of like say, okay, outcome measure 1, 2, 3, 4, and it will populate a table for you where you have to put outcomes or results in for 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have filled out 1, 2, 3, but there's nothing under 4, but you clearly stated that you have 4 outcome measures, it will come back to you and ask you, what happened to outcome measure 4? Why is nothing here? We need results for this. And it will keep kicking it back to you until you finally, and so this is what I'm saying is very important in the beginning to really make sure what are my outcome measures, what are my arms, what are my objectives, to be clear about the objectives when you want to outcome measure, because it will make it a whole lot easier in the end when you have to put in results.
I think the same can still be said for secondary measures. Like, I would encourage my PIs, don't go crazy, because for every secondary measure that you put in, you're gonna have to report results.
Exactly. And I've had trials where they had like, yes, one primary outcome measure, but they had like 10 secondary outcome measures, and I'm like, is this really what you want to do? I mean, like, is it feasible to do 10 secondary outcome measures? For each one of this, you need to put in results, and sometimes they're like, oh, yeah, maybe, I just thought this would be interesting to know as well. I'm like, yes, but,
Call it exploratory.
yes.
Anyone else have a question? Again, I'd like to thank Elena for coming and sharing her expertise with us today.
Does anybody on the phone have a question?
Thank you very much. And next month's session is going to be on FDA 483 observations. The FDA actually makes this information public, and some people are kind of surprised when they see what their peers have been cited for. So hopefully we'll go through some of the FDA observations from the past fiscal year, and hopefully find some ways to avoid those findings happening here. So thank you very much.
There are some, I mean, like I see some of you already got it. There are some printouts I've done, just, it's a decision tree just to make it a little easier for people to decide, is this really a trial that I have to register or not? You know, so, but if you remember of all of this, I'm NIH funded, then you have to register.
Will it be possible to get a copy of the slides?
Sure.
Did you put your email address on your
I did.
Okay, great, because I can send it to everyone who can. For the CNE credit, the woman who normally awards those was out today, but she'll send me the link probably Monday or Tuesday, and I'll send it to everyone who attended today along with the slides. And if you can put your evaluation within 2 weeks, then you can get 1 CNE credit for today's session. So thank you again. Hope everyone has a good weekend.
Hey, Joanna. It's Friday. What are you doing here? I'm going to Thursday.